right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Samantha Weisbeck. I'm the owner and general manager here at Dancewear Center. And I'm very excited for our interview today. We have a very special guest, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jayne DeAngelo, and I'm the owner and artistic director of Adage Ballet Academy here in Seattle, Washington. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you today, Samantha.
Hey, we're so excited to have you here. So we're here today to talk about dance, of course. So can you tell us a little bit about your dancing journey for those who might not already know?
Of course. I grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania on the East Coast, and I started dancing at a very young age, actually. My mom was a dancer up until age 18. She was actually in a tragic car accident, injured her back really badly, so she couldn't continue on dancing. But she always, when she had a daughter, she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna introduce my daughter to ballet and to the world of dance." So we went to like dance performances when I was young, and I think the one where I realized that I really wanted to start dancing was we saw Madeline in the Red Shoes, which was like this adorable little story ballet that was being produced in Central Pennsylvania. And so I don't remember personally, but my parents tell me I was like on the edge of my seat and just begged them to put me in ballet after that. So I started for a year with a teacher. Tanya DePorsic was her name, and she just had this tiny little ballet school in her basement. And I remember like just loving it so much. And she actually came to my parents and told them that they needed to take me somewhere more serious for training. So I enrolled in the local ballet school, which was Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet, which at the time we had no idea how lucky we were because it's actually quite a world-renowned school, and it was just a mile from our house. So we just were super lucky. And so I started there when I was 5, and I trained under Marcia Dale Weary, and Melinda Howe and Darla Hoover and all the other amazing faculty, basically from age 5 all the way until age 17. And I loved it. I knew from a really young age that it's what I wanted to do, for my career and for my profession. I think I was like 9 years old and already training 25 hours a week. It was intense. I was homeschooled, not because of ballet, but because my mom homeschooled all of us kids. There were 5 of us. And yeah, so that gave me the ability to really pour into my dance education as a child and young teen. I had a pretty serious injury when I was 16. I had 3 stress fractures in my left foot, in my metatarsals. And that was a really challenging time because I think I was reaching a point where I was feeling a little bit overworked, a little burnt out. I mean, 25 hours a week since age 9 is a lot for developing humans. So that year of recovery was really transformative for me. And I don't think that I would have made it as a professional dancer without having gone through that, because it really re-centered my focus on taking care of my body in a way that has been really important for me. And we can get into that later. But yeah, so I actually came back just in time from my injury, just in time for audition season in January of that year when I was almost 17. And I auditioned for just 2 places, School of American Ballet and Pacific Northwest Ballet, because I wasn't really in the best shape and I didn't want to re-injure myself. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to pick 2. And I didn't get into SAB even though I had the year before. So that was a bit of a shock. But I did get into PNB with a full scholarship. So that was like the door was opened and I just chose not to second guess it or question myself. And so I came to PNB for the summer intensive, the 5-week summer intensive in, oh gosh, 2016. Yes, so I was 17 years old. And from there, I decided to apply to the professional division at PNB. I just felt like my time at CPYB was closed. I felt like there wasn't much more for me there, so I wanted to leave, even though I still had my senior year of high school. So I moved to Seattle in the fall of 2016 and joined the professional division program. I was a senior in high school. So I was doing that remote because my mom was still homeschooling me, but from afar across the country. So that was definitely really a really big challenge. I wouldn't necessarily recommend leaving home before you've graduated, but I did it. I survived, and I did 2 years of PD, professional division, and then that's when I was offered my apprenticeship with PNB, and I decided to take it, which was, it felt like a no-brainer at the time. Again, I was just felt like things were falling into place. So then I did another half of a year all the way through Nutcracker with this school before I joined and started my apprenticeship in January of 2019. Yeah, January of 2019. That's right. And so, yeah, so then I was an apprentice for 16 weeks and then started in the corps and danced with PNB ever since then. And I left the company just in June of last year to pursue a freelance career, just because I opened my own school with my husband in March of 2021, Adage Ballet Academy, and we just felt like it was time to be more in control of our life and of our schedule and dance things that are fulfilling for us, and yeah, start to build a life into the future. So I've been really, really happy with my decision to be more in charge of my own career, I guess you could say. But it definitely took a lot of bravery because I was always in that path of like, this is what you do next. And this door opened and I took it. And then this was offered to me and I was like, okay. And so I always kind of followed those steps. And so it was a huge thing to make such a transition to be more in the unknown, but I haven't looked back. It's been a wonderful journey, and I'm still dancing a lot. So now my life looks more like I train personally in ballet and conditioning in the mornings and afternoons, and then I teach all evenings, 4 to 8:30, and then on Saturdays. So it's definitely busy. People tell me I'm so busy, and I just say, no, I'm just focused. It's just a season of life where I have to be focused. But yeah, so that's basically it.
That's amazing. I like that you're focused. Yeah, you're choosing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I busyness for me is like somebody put that upon me,
Mm,
and I made this choice for myself. So it's not busyness. It's
yeah,
just I have a lot of responsibilities.
totally. I love that. Great. Well, can you tell us a little bit about why you applied to be a DWC ambassador?
Yeah, actually, so it's really interesting because when I came to Seattle as a young person, I was in the atmosphere of PNB, which is such a big machine and such a huge bubble that it was so hard actually to get involved in the greater dance scene of Seattle because it was so difficult to even be able to go to see other dance shows and other, even just knowing about other schools around or other companies. It's such a focused environment, and it's so all consuming of your life and of your time. I just really felt like I didn't know what else was out there. So when I left the company not so long ago, I feel like I've had this craving to get connected to the greater dance scene in Seattle and the region and make more connections with people. And I have connections, but like all of them come through PNB, which is awesome and beautiful. And I have like wonderful people there. But I just have this like desire to connect with the greater community of dance and not necessarily just the professional sphere, if that makes sense. So actually my good friend Myung Margulis, who was an ambassador not so long ago, or maybe even still, I lose track, but she is actually the one who encouraged me. She was like, it's been so great, you should apply, you should do it, they would love you. And I was like, I've never been huge on social media. In fact, if I could go as a freelance dancer without having to use that, I would. But unfortunately, that's how you have to make connections these days mostly. And so why not just embrace that, I guess, was my thought. And so yeah, so that's basically it. I'm just really excited to meet people and make connections through this ambassadorship and start to really talk to other dancers and hear about their stories.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely a huge piece of this program is like getting connected and like that networking piece. So I'm really excited to see where it goes for you.
Yay, thank you. Thank you for having
Yeah.
me.
Oh gosh, it's our pleasure. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about dance, of course. Can you tell us what your favorite thing about dance is?
Ah, there's so many things. I love the I've always been a technician. I love ballet technique. I love theory, ballet theory and terminology and all of the wonderful things that sometimes get pushed to the side. But I've always really been serious about ballet. I think it's funny because I have a younger sister and we both were in dance growing up, and yet I my parents never thought I would become the dancer because I was always very serious about it. Like, it was no dressing up and dancing around the house for me. Like, it was like, this is serious business. I go to my class and I'm working hard and it's going towards a performance. And I always loved performing, but in that sense that it was, um precious to me and important and not frivolous or like silly. So yeah, so I always from a young age was into that like rigor and discipline, I guess, of classical ballet. But dance in general for me, it's always just been a wonderful personal expression. I'm also a musician, so I love music and feeling music in my body. I started playing the harp when I was 12 years old, and uh, the harp is such an amazing instrument because the soundboard is placed on your chest. So you feel the vibration of the instrument kind of like internally inside your body when you're playing. And that was just something I still to this day just adore, that sensation. And I think dancing brings me that as well because the music kind of connecting with the movement brings that similar vibration into the body, and it's very healing to me. It brings me into like a place of center and peace. So I think that's the biggest thing about dance that I love. I think the combination of that personal expression with the rigor and discipline of the technique, I just think it's such a profound art form.
That's tremendous. That's so interesting. I've never thought about that with playing the harp, but it makes so much sense. That's really phenomenal. Very cool.
I was so lucky because my harp teacher, her name was Elizabeth Asmus, and she actually went to Juilliard and she double majored in dance and music. And so she used to tell me stories. I was like a little 12-year-old girl, and she used to tell me stories about being in the elevator with George Balanchine and like, like she was at Juilliard, which shares a building, but she would talk about the School of American Ballet students and the New York City Ballet company members and how they overlapped and whatnot. So it was really magical. She wrote me a letter when I graduated about at the time she thought I would end up in New York. And she said, the city where the sidewalks vibrate. And so I think I've always had that relationship with energy and feeling those vibrations. And so, yeah, dance does that for me.
It's so cool. Yeah. Oh, amazing. Okay, so on the flip side, then we're going to talk about what was, maybe still is, your biggest challenge within the sphere of dance, and then what advice would you give other dancers that are also struggling with that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I thought about this one. There's really two major things, but personally, in my training growing up, it was really intense. And I wouldn't say it was harsh because I had wonderful and loving teachers, but the way the training was taught to me, it was harsh on the body. And I had a certain level of natural ability as a child. I'm not going to lie about that. Like I definitely had this natural gift for dancing. And so to a certain degree, I was fine with that harsher style of training. But as I grew and went through puberty and entered young adulthood, um, I didn't really have the tools to take care of my body. I was never really taught properly how to do so. So I dealt with some pretty major injuries at a young age, unfortunately. The first one being my 3 stress fractures in my left foot, and then I also tore the plantar plate under the ball of my left foot. So that was like the first wake up call, and I had to learn about how to properly condition myself. So at the time, I got into a little bit of yoga, but it was kind of like more commercial yoga, um, you could say, where it's like fitness yoga. So it served its purpose, but I wasn't really making the mind body connection that I needed to as to how that yoga would translate into ballet. So my body was just suffering. I came out to Seattle to join PD, and I had a bunch of little injuries, like things that would come up, and then a major hip injury. I dislocated my hip on stage during Cinderella, and it was like a month before the pandemic hit in 2020. So I spent like the majority of 2020 rehabbing that hip injury. And actually that's when I met my husband, Guillaume Basso, he's a yoga professor now, but he's been training in yoga since like over a decade. And so he really started to teach me how to condition my body properly. And I spent like that first year of pandemic life um, fixing myself and open. I was told from a young age that my body would never be able to have a middle split. And I just believed because I knew it was painful when I tried to stretch. And so I was like, oh, people are telling me it's not possible. So they're probably right because it hurts and it's hard. And they're wrong. There's actually so many techniques and different cross trainings and different ways that you can protect and heal your body and actually create more mobility and more range of motion at the same time strength. Um, and and ballet, especially classical ballet, isn't necessarily going to get you that. It's going to help you control what you have and teach you how to deal with it. But through thousands of repetitions, if you have lines of tension that are not resolved, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. So I started that journey in 2020, and people, like all my physical therapists and doctors, were absolutely shocked at how fast I healed from that first hip dislocation. And I really do credit that to the help of my husband and the practice of yoga. And then fast forward to, oh gosh, I have to count in reverse, but 2022, so 2 years later, we were going on tour to New York with PNB and to LA. So we kind of had a summer of tours. And unfortunately, I had a pretty serious accident with a partner in rehearsal. We were trying this crazy new lift and it went wrong, and I fell onto a straight leg. And the same hip, I fractured the femoral head. It was an osteochondral fracture of the femoral head in my right hip, so the cartilage in the bone. And that injury was the final drop in the bucket, you could say, for me to realize that I needed to take this really seriously because I only have one body. And I was so young. I was 23 years old. And I had like 6 different doctors tell me it would be unlikely for me to heal from this injury. It was super rare. I mean, it's a super, super rare injury. It usually is found in the knees and ankles, but very, very rarely in the hip. So, anyways, so I started again. I started again to refocus on healing and using dance as a way not to force my body into places it's not able to go, but in a way that can help keep my body running for a long time. And what I've realized about myself is because with this hip injury, people didn't know how to treat it. So we tried a lot of things, and one was like crutches for 11 weeks. And if anything, at the end of 11 weeks, it was worse instead of better. And so what we've come to realize is that actually, when I stop moving, when I stop dancing, when I stop creating those vibrations and conditioning my body, uh, I hurt. And so I'm on this pathway to never stop for the rest of my life, basically. And so, yeah, so I think that discovery, because nobody taught me that. And I think we're so lucky, and students growing up now are so lucky because of how prevalent the importance of conditioning has become. Like, there's so many different outlets. There's Pilates, there's gyrotonics, there's yoga, there's calisthenics, there's even just physical therapy and cardio work that is becoming more and more taught, and more of a no-brainer for teachers to implement into their training for their students. So in a way, that's exciting for me and hopeful for the future. And that's definitely something that we emphasize a lot at our own school. But I didn't have that. I just had teachers who were really good at teaching ballet, but didn't have those tools in their belt to help in that regard. And so it kind of felt like I was driving blind when I got into the professional sphere of like everybody told me what they did, and none of it really worked for me. And so that was a personal discovery. And so I think for my advice for dancers that are, especially up and coming dancers that are in training right now, is just to try a lot of things and find what works for you, because it might not be. I did Pilates for a long time, and I realized that it was creating a too rigid lower back for me, because I have a certain amount of kyphosis in my upper back, which is an exaggerated curve of the upper spine. So I needed to do a lot more round movements of the spine instead of straight. So that's where yoga is really what works for me. But I think, yeah, I think really putting in time and energy and even money now to protect yourself in the future, it's really valuable, and I can't stress that enough. Don't wait, because when you're young you feel like you can do anything, and it's just so much better to start taking care of yourself now, because then maybe you won't even have problems that you have to go through, and that would be wonderful. Yeah, so I think that's the main one for me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So great. Yeah, so great. Fantastic. Well, last but not least, can you share a little bit about what's coming up for you in the near future? Are you hosting any classes? Are you going to be performing? Do you have any workshops? Anything?
Yeah, my schedule is loaded. So next, actually on Wednesday, my husband and I were going up to Port Angeles to perform in Don Quixote with Port Angeles City Ballet. I'll be Cupid, and Guillaume will be Gamacho, so that will be fun. And yeah, so that's a performance coming up. But for the academy, we have our spring showcase, which is May 21st and 22nd. We'll be at the Carco Theater in Renton. And I'm really excited for that, actually, because a big project that we have in the works is we've acquired the rights to create an original 3-act ballet with an original libretto and score. And so it's called The Magic Mirror, and it's based loosely off of Alexander Pushkin's poem, The Tale of this Dead Princess and the Seven Knights, I believe it's called, and then also loosely off of Snow White, but it really is kind of an original take. And so we're gonna release at our spring showcase 4 little sketches of dances from the ballet, and it's gonna take us years to put this whole thing together, but it's a really exciting project that we'll keep working on through the upcoming years and months. So yeah, the spring showcase, and then we have our summer intensive in July and August, which is 6 weeks long. We actually do have a couple of spots left in our younger kid age range, like 10, 11 years old. And then we also have like 1 or 2 spots in our very advanced level. So the middle, we have like so many 13 and 14-year-olds, but we have some openings at the low and high end. And then I think the one that I'm always most excited about is our preseason conditioning workshop, which happens the last week of August before school years start up again. And we just started that last year, but it's so much fun because we just do 3 hours a day of conditioning for dancers, yoga and therapy and deep stretch and all these things that we need to prepare our bodies. And so I always really look forward to that because it's a good boost to the season. Yeah, and then of course, we're already started planning for the Ojak Bridge Dance and Art Festival 2024 with Me Young Margulis and the MMDC. So we can't release yet what that's going to be, but we're doing another original story there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, great. If you want to send us over those links, we'll go ahead and include them below. So anything that you want folks to be able to access, we'll pop them in.
You sure?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I loved hearing more about your story. I know everybody else is going to love listening to it. And for everybody out there watching, if you like this video, you can go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Good. Thank you,
Bye.
Samantha. Bye.